HarperCollins presents The End of the Road by Jack Cooke, read by Paul Hilliar. Prologue. One dismal morning, I walked into my local churchyard on a whim. I had no faith to carry me over the threshold, only the echoes of a few Our Fathers and the lyrics of half-remembered hymns. Yet the church beckoned to me each time I passed it, alone inside its brick walls and guarding the remains of 1,000 people I'd never met. It began to rain as I reached for the latch on the churchyard gate. A rabbit bolted from behind a tombstone and disappeared beneath a stone cross, using the dead to hide from the living. In the church porch, gargoyles pulled faces at me from the safety of high pedestals. The door was heavy, and I had to lean into it. It swung slowly inward to reveal a dim and private world, the village notice board rustling softly as I passed, flyers for second-hand lawnmowers competing with curry nights in the pub. The air inside smelt of wood polish and damp prayer books. It felt close, heavy, with the weight of expectation. The pews were empty and silent, save for the flies that buzzed belly up under the windows. I reached a corner of the church where the shadows held their own communion. A large memorial stood with its back to the windows, pressed hard into the join between two walls. Amid this gloom knelt the figure of a man, his knees on a stone pillow and his hands joined together in prayer. The paint on his face had faded like an old doll's makeup, and his gaze wandered among the ceiling beams. Beneath him was a statue of his wife. The carving was much smaller and barely reached to my waist. Only the woman's back could be seen, a great sweep of black drapery rising to a hood like a cobra's silhouette. The form beneath the folds was thin and angular, unnaturally pinched in at the shoulders. To look upon her face, I had to squeeze between the memorial steps and the wall of the church, until we came nose to nose. In contrast to her husband, the woman's gaze was direct, meeting my own. Her hair was drawn back from a high forehead, the stone scalp framed by the hood's sinister fork. A sharp nose ended in a small, tight-lipped mouth, oddly twisted at the corners. Her hands had been amputated at the wrist by neglect or vandalism, and I imagined them as forbidding as the rest of her, thin, talon-like. Where her husband's epitaph ran the length of several stone tablets, the woman's read only, "Here lies Elizabeth Reed." Turning away from this fearful effigy, I noticed a small stone flower, the size of my palm, had fallen from the tomb ceiling and lay unbroken on the floor. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands, wondering if I had just missed this moment in time. I emerged from this reverie to find my eyes drawn again to the hooded form of Elizabeth Reed. If the statue were a true likeness, she must have inspired as much dread in life as in death. Something brushed against the windows of the church, the shadow of tall weeds dancing against the glass, and I left the building to escape my own irrational fear. In the churchyard, memories were less well preserved, the grave markers eroding like the coastline hidden beyond the boundary wall. The wind was in the east, and I could hear breakers on the beach a mile distant, the great undertow sounding like it swept in among the graves. I counted 200 tombstones listing forward or backward as if their occupants were constantly rearranging themselves. The ground beneath them teemed with older bones, generations stacked in the soil. Returning through the iron gates, I paused by neighbouring graves. The first was the headstone of a sailor lost at sea. I harbour here below. The second, a fresh grave, not 2 weeks old, with the funeral flowers withered inside their wrappings. The visit to the church reminded me how divorced I was from death. I inhabited a high-turnover world, a place of constant change that continued without pause or reflection. I ignored the dead because they interrupted life. The possibility of dying was all
Sample complete. Ready to continue?